It is no longer the age of the dying god. Matriarchal societies, releasing ego, and progression of community. What is a matriarchal society? This is a commonly misinterpreted word because we're so used to harmful stereotypes that the patriarchy places on us that we expect the word to mean a reversal of our current roles. In this social system, lineage is through the mother, mothers hold authority and typically primary property ownership as well. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines matriarchy as a system of social organization in which descent and inheritance are traced through the female line. The emphasis is on community-focused leadership, i.e., a village to raise a child. Understanding the word patriarchy also gives us more insight into exactly why the two are so vastly different. Patriarchy is a social system in which men hold primary power, moral authority, social privilege, control of property, and dominate political leadership. Keeping in mind here that historically women were deemed property. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines patriarchy as a social organization marked by the supremacy of the father in the clan or family, the legal dependence of wives and children, and the reckoning of descent and inheritance in the male line. Essentially, one establishes a hierarchy and one actively works to remove it. There's emphasis on the mother and predominantly the child, but that does not mean the subjugation, definition, the action of bringing someone or something under domination or control of others, not an emphasis. Examples of these societies. Historically, true matriarchies have rarely been documented, though matrilineal, matrifocal, and matrilocal societies have been recorded. The ones we will talk about are the Moswa in China, Tibet, the Minangkabau in Indonesia, the Akan in Ghana, the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois in North America, and the Minoans of Knossos, Crete, Greece. The Moswa, matrilineal and matrifocal. The Moswa people are an ethnic minority living in the Hangduan Mountains of China's Yunnan and Sichuan provinces. I'm probably going to say these words wrong, even though I wrote down pronunciations for all of the ones that I didn't know this time. Anyways, current approximations put their population at 40,000, often referred to as China's last matrilineal society. The term matriarchal is used to describe them, often helping attract tourism. However, the two terms do not accurately depict the complexity that exists within their social organization. While women are typically head of household, pass down inheritance, and make business decisions, the men typically hold political power. There was once a point where the women held political lead, and as such, many scholars argue that they should be considered a matriarchy. Still, many prefer the term matrifocal. Foundation of the Moswa society is a corporate house group typically of 20 people called the Awo, where buildings, land, and livestock are owned collectively. It is set up to maintain and not for individual purposes. If an Awo grows too large, it is split into multiples which stay a part of the larger matrilineal called sisi. If an Awo is incapable of accomplishing tasks or projects on its own, it will be sent to the neighboring houses to ask for help. An Awo will typically call on their sisi for this or just other households in the village. The leader of Awo is the Dabu. This role goes from sister to sister and then on to daughter. It is mostly given to women unless a man is particularly suited for the job, and although the Dabu is the leader, non-routine decisions are always decided by adult members of the household, often during meals. Roles are assigned to individuals based on their skill set. The Moswa people work on farming tasks like raising livestock, yak, water buffalo, sheep, goats, and poultry, and growing crops. Tasks are distributed based on gender and age groups, though it is highly flexible and often not followed as the well-being of the Awo is the focal point. Adults take care of the owl, children do simple routine tasks, and the elders weave or help the children. They're mostly self sufficient and raise enough food for their daily needs. They do not have refrigeration, so they salt or smoke meat to preserve it, and are renowned for their preserved pork. Local economies are typically barter systems, but as they continue to interact with the outside world, the use of cash based trade goes up. The average income is low, US $150 to $200 a year, which causes financial restrictions regarding travel and education. Due to isolation in the past, the Moswa women produce much of their own household goods, including cloth goods, and the Moswa men help bring up the children and oversee fishing and livestock, particularly slaughtering, in which the women never participate. Moswa people usually learn who their father is through casual conversation or hints from family and neighbors. The mother and sister of the father will visit when the baby turns one, bringing them gifts. Fathers are not responsible for discipline, nor are they required to provide for their children. Rather, they are expected to discipline and provide for their sister's children and be close to their nephew's children. If a wife moves into the husband's owl, their children will inherit their father's identity and not the mother's. Though one historical piece that is often missed notes that the Moswa have traditionally been a feudal society with a small number of nobles ruling over a larger peasant population. The Moswa practiced a parallel line of descent which encouraged people to not step outside of their social status, the basis of which was that the father would pass his status to his sons and the mother to her daughters. Therefore, if a common woman married a man of nobility, her daughter would continue to be a commoner, but her son would be a nobleman. Children adopted into an owl are treated as equal family members, with some adopted girls becoming the matriarchs of their adopted families. One of the most known but poorly understood aspects of Moswa culture is the practice of walking marriages. This is the most common form of marriage in their culture, though it isn't unheard of for a woman to cohabit with their husband. Aforenoted, children will inherit the father's identity. In a walking marriage, both partners live under the roof of their families during the day, but at night the man will visit and stay at the woman's house, if given permission, until sunrise. They do not technically live in the same household, but are free to visit with permission. Children of parents in a walking marriage are raised by maternal uncles who take on the responsibilities of the father as he's not around in the daytime typically. The bonds are based on mutual affection because when a man expresses his interest, it is the woman who gives permission. The visits are usually kept secret, and when a child is born, the man has no moral, cultural, or legal obligation to care for them. The support from extended family allows for both men and women to engage in sexual relationships with whoever they please. Collective effort from the entire family rather than the biological father is what helps rear children. If a father wishes to indicate his interest in the upbringing of his children, he may bring gifts to the mother's family. This gives him status without actually making him part of the family. Wikipedia Contributors 2022a. There's much more, but some of the basic tenets of the culture are that sense of the village it takes to raise a child. There's also no need for messy divorces because the custody of children is always known, and partners are not contractually bound. Still, many walking marriages become partners for the duration of their lives, and everyone helps to raise enough food, and roles are known and understood. And while from an outside perspective I cannot make judgment on whether they are functioning perfectly, I can say it seems like they're functioning well. The Maninkaba, a matriarchate slash matrilineal. The Minang people are the largest matrilineal society in the world. The Minangkabau people have a significant population in the West Sumatra region of Indonesia, about half their total population, 4,281,439 out of 8 million. The Minang people are also recognized as a minority for their populations in certain parts of Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and the Netherlands. Wikipedia Contributors 2021. They tend to refer to their social system as a matriarchate because they have women rule in marriage, family matters, and property customs. In that, there is some truth to the idea that women rule the Maninkabau society. After marriage, husbands move into the wife's household, and he is expected to contribute labor and income. Women manage the land with the cooperation of their brother and the senior males of the matrilineal clan. Neither male nor female rule is possible under their social philosophy that believes decision making should be done through consensus. Differences of opinion are regarded as normal, but consensus is the goal. The Manong people have a proverb regarding those differences: crossing wood in the hearth makes the fire glow. It is then repeated in the idea that men and women are different in a way that complements each other. Due to this, they live in a peaceful and nearly violence free society with egalitarian definition relating to or believing in the principle that all people are equal and deserve equal rights and opportunities, philosophy guiding the activities of everyday life. Sande, no date. Similar to the previous example, a boy's primary responsibilities are to his mother's and sister's clans. It is ideal for married sisters to remain in their parental home, and husbands have some sort of visiting status. Landholding is a crucial function maintained by the women because Mininkaba men often migrate seeking wealth and experience. Due to this, the women are responsible for maintaining the continuation of the family and the distribution and cultivation of land. In the culture, marriage is also viewed as a commitment of two people instead of a union, so there's no stigma attached to divorce. The Manong are also known for their devotion to Islam. Most of the women and men pray 5 times a day, fast during Ramadan, and express the desire to make the pilgrimage to Mecca in their lifetime. They believe in standing as tall, sitting as low, meaning nobody is on an increased stage. The culture also stresses the importance of learning, and due to this, the Manong people are overrepresented in educated professions in Indonesia. The group also insists that their matrilineal inheritance does not interfere with the precepts of Islam because they make a distinction between high inheritance and low inheritance. High inheritance being the home and land, and low inheritance being what a father passes to his children out of his professional earnings, which they follow Islamic law dictating that sons get twice as much as daughters. Wikipedia Contributors 2021. Again, much more to be said. Each culture that develops has so much more nuance than an article online would depict. Meeting and speaking with a person from that region would likely much better describe cultural practices, but on the surface, it seems that the Manong people have it figured out. The religion that came around to them didn't lead them to stop their traditions, it just shifted it. They believe that no one is above another and work to come to agreements on things, even recognizing that disagreements are necessary to understanding things from a more well rounded perspective. I'd say that's well adjusted for a culture when even influence from modern pressures doesn't shake you from your beliefs. It's either insanity or faith. Of course, that's not me saying they're insane. This is me saying that there are certain things that should shake you from a set of beliefs. For example, if you found out that the person that created the religion was a pedophile. If you weren't shaken from your faith at that point, it'd be considered insanity. Akin or Akan. Matrilineal. The Akan people have an estimated population of 25 million people with significant populations in Ghana and the Ivory Coast. The group is traditionally matrilineal, though philosophically they are united through 12 patrilineal spirit groups called the Ntoro. Akan kings have female co rulers who are known as Queen Mother and can rule as king if she wishes. Members of the main 8 Akan clans are integral to governance and viewed as royals due to their chiefs being chosen from them. Interestingly, the Akan mythological stories are called Anansism, meaning the spider story, or figuratively, traveler's tales. Generally, but not always, these stories are revolved around Kwaku Ananse, a trickster spirit depicted as a spider, human, or combination of the two. The folklore character became widespread, but the name Ananse or Anansi originates from the Akan word for spider. It is an upheld view that a man is strongly related to his mother's brother but weakly related to his father's brother. Therefore, uncle nephew relationships gain priority over their own sons. Still, it is after all possible male heirs have been exhausted that women inherit. Notably, Harriet Tubman is largely regarded to be of Akan descent, though sources are contradictory. Wikipedia Contributors 2020. Women in the Akan groups have been crucial contributors in their society historically. They've excelled in diverse roles so far as agriculture all the way to trade, leadership, and governance. Akan women face a significant level of financial freedom and equality compared with their men, even managing important economic tasks. They're involved in familial, governmental, and military organizations with the same legal privileges as the men in those industries. Yet, despite these contributions, responsibilities have grown as the need to transition into growing cash crops and work for wages continues. Regardless of these obstacles, Akan women have continued to show remarkable resilience and ingenuity, even participating in additional income generating tasks like baking and trading. Often ignored by colonialists and contemporaries, Queen Mothers play vital roles in their communities. Yet another compelling example for alternative models and dynamics for society. Nyahunsvi 2024. I probably said that person's name wrong. I apologize. The Haudenosaunee. Matrilineal, traditionally matriarchal historically. The cohesion of the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois Confederacy was reliant upon a social structure that valued stability and collective governance. The central idea to this structuring was matrilineal kinship, where lineage, inheritance, and social identity was descendant through the female line. This ensured the separation of military aggression from domestic administration. Distribution of political power played an important role as well, with clan mothers, eldest matriarchs, possessing the absolute authority to depose male chiefs. This meant that the chiefs served at the pleasure of the matriarchy and were evaluated upon how they kept the peace rather than military strength alone. This arrangement kept checks and balances that therefore prevented the rise of autocracy. Definition: form of government in which one person possesses unlimited power. The group also used adoption strategically to optimize population levels, with captives replacing lost family members, and the group maintained the vitality required to sustain geopolitical dominance. Admin 2026. Under the Iroquois belief system, no one is entitled to own land, but women are believed to be appointed stewards of the land by the Creator. Clan mothers appoint leaders as they are held to a higher regard for having raised children. By that same ruling, if the leader shows corruption, does not listen to their people, or is not sound, the clan mothers will strip him of leadership. The chief's sister has historically been responsible for naming his successor. Children of traditional marriage obtain social status through the mother's line. Her brothers are important teachers and mentors to her children. The role is especially true as it relates to introducing the boys to men's roles within society and societies. Within their belief system, it is incest to marry someone from the matrilineal clan, but considered acceptable to marry someone from the same patrilineal clan. As men had to travel longer distances for resources, women began having more influence in society. The stature of Iroquois women inspired and impacted the early American feminist movement greatly. Wikipedia contributors 2022b. Iroquois also believed in the three sisters, which I referenced in the writing Human Farms or Human Farms, an Essay on Depravity, depending if you're on Substack or Patreon. At the end of it, the three sisters were three crops that complemented each other planted together: squash, corn, and beans. The corn provides structure for the beans to climb, the beans provide nitrogen to the soil necessary for other crops, and the squash spread across the ground, blocking sunlight and stopping weeds from growing. Wikipedia contributors 2019. Husbands would come to live with their wives in the houses that the family had lived in their entire lives. Sons would stay in the house until they married and moved into their wives' houses, though they were still members of their mother's long house and their loyalty laid there first. Children were surrounded by family and taught by the elders, and every child was welcomed and cared for by their mother, mother's sisters, and their husbands. Children called nearly all of the women mother, which left a sense of security in knowing so many mothers were there to guide and help them. They also had many brothers and sisters because their cousins were called this as well. Children who misbehaved were not punished in the same physical manner that was widely accepted by Europeans, rather, water would be thrown on them. The belief was that it would wash away the badness. Older children were dunked in the flow of a stream. If this still did not work, they would then be hit with a red willow whip. Typically, Haudenosaunee children's sense of morals left them feeling ashamed and embarrassed of their actions when they saw the disappointment and sadness in their elders. Today, the family structure is more like the common nuclear family. However, the Haudenosaunee people still follow the traditional matriarchal structure of status passed through the mother's line. Haudenosaunee Confederacy editors no date. So much more to be talked about regarding the Iroquois culture, beliefs, history, society, and government. In fact, the resource that I pulled from to talk about the matriarchal aspect of their society is so long that Wikipedia recommends editors of the page to split it into sub-articles to make it more comfortable to navigate. Due to this, I know I barely scratched the surface of what this culture was and is capable of, but nonetheless, I find once again that matriarchal societies seem to have it figured out. Obviously, it's easier to point to a history we don't understand when making assumptions, either good or bad, especially when we have little knowledge of it. It was that last bit about not hitting kids that made me think they were on the right track. Minoans of Knossos, matriarchal. The Minoans were widely considered to be a matriarchal society. Their art and religious practices seem to reflect on this. The specifics of their society are complex and often debated, yet evidence suggests that religious rituals and worship of goddesses align closely with the concept of matriarchal structure. Therefore, while there are indications of matriarchal structure, the overall structure of Minoan society is a constant topic of ongoing research and interpretation. Harms 2024. With that said, as I dive into the rest of my research, keep in mind we don't know for certain what structure they followed. Linear A and Linear B were writing systems used by the Minoans and Mycenaeans and an early form of Greek. Linear A has not yet been deciphered, and most information about Minoan women comes from art and Linear B tablets. Linear A did evolve into Linear B and then to Greek, but as we lose a certain nuance between translations, it is doubtless we are missing something important in not knowing what is written on Linear A. Scholarship remains limited about Minoan women. Minoan society divided men from women in illustrations, clothing, and social duties. Documents written in Linear B were found depicting Minoan families where spouses and children are not listed altogether. In one section, fathers were listed with their sons, mothers with their daughters, and in a completely different section, the men who lived in the same household. This signifies a similar gender divide to the other groups listed previously. In art, men and women were also portrayed differently. Men were typically depicted with darker skin, while women were represented with lighter skin. Clothing depicted also marks a difference where Minoan men are shown in little clothing, while women's bodies were more covered up, specifically later. Fresco art shows how women's clothing evolved and became increasingly more elaborate. The breasts were emphasized through varying degrees of exposure. The significance of breasts in the Minoan culture is not currently understood. I mean, they're boobs. It isn't particularly hard to understand wanting to depict them. Though I do understand that developing the unique purpose of why can be more complicated. Both men and women are seen depicted with wasp waist, meaning very small, like what Western women wore leading into the 20th century. Four types of women are depicted: elite, the masses, servants, and religious/sacred involved women in much less frequent numbers. Elite women were depicted with twice the stature of lower classes to emphasize the difference between women in society. Childcare was the main role of women in society. though other roles such as food gathering and preparation, household caretaking, ceramics, textile, crafting were represented. As women got older, it is assumed they were expected to manage the household and job mentor, teaching the younger women the jobs that they had themselves participated in. And while women were portrayed as the caretakers of children in art, pregnant women were rarely depicted, sometimes represented in the form of sculpted pots with the rounded base serving as their pregnant belly. Furthermore, no art depicting childbirth, breastfeeding, or procreating exists. This leads historians to believe that the Minoans either found the act sacred or inappropriate and meant to be kept private within society. Two famous Minoan snake goddess figurines from Knossos have bodices that circle their breasts but make no attempts to cover them. There were some reconstructions of destroyed frescoes that show this costume, but whether the figures depicted are meant to be goddesses, priestesses, or devotees is not known. It is known that the Minoan women typically covered their breasts, and that it is possible that religious context may have been an exception. It is thought that the Minoans were more or less exclusively worshipping a mother goddess, which influenced public views for decades. Though without relevant text or readable inscriptions, the picture is vague. Historically, we do not have names of deities until after the Mycenaean era. Archaeologists identified a mountain goddess, a dove goddess, a snake goddess, the Potnia Theron, goddess of animals, and a goddess of childbirth. Wikipedia contributors 2026a. There is a lot more historically to cover here, but my aim was purely to address the matriarchal aspects of each culture in my society. That said, you're completely welcome to do a deep dive into any of these cultures if they grabbed your interest. I think with a lot of these, we don't have a personalized understanding, which slows the development of our comprehension of how societies can function in different structures. Life moves on whether we take a moment to pause and enjoy it or not. What I mean by that is there are many beautiful pieces created within these societies and people living happily outside of what a one-track mind could comprehend. No societal structure is perfect, but the closer we get to egalitarianism, the better off I think we will be. Why is it so hard to drop the ego? I understand that most of the concepts in implementing a new societal structure are theoretical. If we are incapable of change and growth on an individual level, there's unfortunately no way we can implement an entirely new structure or hierarchy, for lack of a better term, because people simply will not accept it. But why is it so hard to accept? I'm willing to argue that it is almost entirely an issue stemming from the ego that we have developed. The funny part of that is that men and women in our modern society are struggling with two sides of the same coin. Ego looks different depending upon whether you were raised as a man or a woman. More often than not, ego comes out as entitlement, lack of empathy, and can show up as a lack of accountability as well. Anybody can struggle with any number of aspects involving ego, but most commonly, I see entitlement from individuals socialized as men, brought up in the expectation of titles or to be above others, and a lack of accountability in those socialized as women, socialized to fear being incorrect, lest your credibility be judged, or somebody direct violence towards you, as well as infantilized. If we cannot learn to drop the ego, be ourselves, but apologize when our actions or potential miscalculations lead us to harm someone, we cannot have sovereignty. In all senses of the word, accountability is a trait we are lacking. Society, not every individual. Sometimes you say something that hurts someone's feelings, especially for those who are socially underdeveloped or need more help understanding social patterns. The best part is if you apologize honestly and make an effort not to repeat the action or phrase, people will usually forgive you. Sometimes we come to realize that the words said that hurt our feelings did so because they point to a broader issue that we were avoiding addressing within ourselves, at which point we gain a new opportunity for growth and accountability. Recognizing that and redirecting your frustration towards development and correcting the setback is how things change and progress. Aeons. First was the age of the mother. Everything was beautiful, but all things must come to some form of an end. Next followed the age of man, the dying god, and the resurrection. This brought the idea that dying to something made you stronger when you came back. Concepts of ego death echo sentiments of this aeon. Finally, we come to the age of the child. We have an opportunity to make something entirely new. This is the chance to become a student again, to take the pieces of what we were taught and apply it to society. Things are beautiful when we worship women and when we worship creation, yet our biggest spurt of growth comes from death. Not in the literal sense of the word, but more so as it refers to the end of cycles, the chance to start again endlessly. If we take those pieces together and learn to love the entire cycle of nature, we might live in a more peaceful world. Might ask, what happens if we continue to disregard the value of young minds in correlation to this age of the child? I don't find it simple to explain or answer because Each mind brings something unique. Our nervous system allows each of us to view the world completely differently from one another. Why, if not to provide perspectives we couldn't dream of and negate blind spots? When we do not recognize the value that exists in children's minds and perspectives, we lose this value behind being fearfully and wonderfully made. Psalm chapter 139, verse 14. The human body is a nightmare and a half biologically. Take the obstetrical dilemma, for example. The evolution behind bipedalism led to narrower hips, while the evolution behind having larger brains and cephalization necessitated larger heads. Due to this specific combination, human females have an elevated risk of obstructed labor, and yet we persist as a species. Brilliant minds have come about and will continue to do so, but our chances of solving many troubling dilemmas rest on the number of minds we choose to cultivate. Just some food for thought. Small changes. What we can do on a daily level to put value back in the village. Sometimes the hard part in community building is coming up with ideas. Usually we find it's fear, whether that be fear of starting, fear of rejection, or otherwise. The first step is getting yourself out there. Talk to your neighbors and address common concerns and needs. Maybe you live in a small town and getting fresh produce is a difficult task, so you set up a community garden. You put up a volunteer sheet and you teach people how to grow certain crops. Maybe you set up community events to do crafts and learn about each other. Whatever ideas you come up with can and should be explored. The best part about strengthening your community is that it involves you. The needs you all have, the interests you care about, you get to share and build upon them. The next thing is addressing fear. You probably don't spend a lot of time thinking about what other people fear, I assume. If you do, good on you for being empathetic and aware. The basis is we are all scared of something. But if we allow that to determine the type of life we will live, then we will always be missing out on the best parts of living. If you are afraid to start, simply doing the tiniest task will break this curse. Get excited about your cause, find everything you can devote yourself to making it happen. If you are afraid of rejection, you need only try to put yourself out there to find just how surprisingly accommodating people are. Most people are in their own world, and choosing to step outside of that is what makes the world a bit brighter. Closing thoughts and summary. You provide something special to the world that we would not find without you in it. Everybody uses that comparison of how many Burger Kings and McDonald's are located right next to each other, both still thriving. The difference being we are human and not conglomerate. Meaning, the specific blend of emotion and ideas you provide are more nuanced and easier to miss if we do not speak up. Not because I think of any person as unremarkable, simply that the world is loud and sometimes we need to provide the space for each other to be heard. That is why community is so important, lest we forget that simply being alive is a miracle. Maybe there is no quote unquote perfect structuring of society, and we must find the small corners of the world that remind us why it is worth getting up each day. All I know is that there's a lot of suffering in our current mode of operation, and I only wish to relieve some of it by providing reprieve. Definition: cancel or postpone the punishment of someone. Perhaps I will forever make sense only to myself, but if all I do is provide a space in which to talk, be heard, and unwind amidst the bustling social platforms, that will be enough. I hope you found something or felt something reading or listening to this, as that is all we can wish to provide to an audience. Thank you for being here. If you are a fan of investigative journalism and philosophy, you should subscribe for free today. If you would like to further support my efforts, you can subscribe to my Patreon, link will be below, which helps me cover research materials, i.e., purchasing text, as well as my time and effort in development. Along with that, it supports my efforts in keeping education free and widespread. I thank you for your support no matter the form. All my resources in writing this will be in the Substack and Patreon links in the description, as well as backdates of any other things you would like to read. Thank you for being here.